Today I'm taking a look at the DC Multiverse Modern Red Hood from Dawn of DC, but things aren't all good in the hood. Stick around and find out why. Welcome to 5 Points of Articulation. Starting with the packaging, and we've got our tried and true DC Multiverse window box. This red hood is from Dawn of DC, although the UPC simply says Modern, and honestly, between Rebirth and Infinite Frontier and Future's End, I can't keep track of all these reboots and resets. We do get some pretty cool artwork of Jason on the back. I really dig this kind of watercolor style. My box is damaged, but that's probably why it was still on the shelf in the store, but that one's not exactly McFarlane's fault. For packaging, I'm giving Red Hood an all good 4 points. Moving on to presentation, and the top of his hood, Jason stands at 7 1/4 inches, or thereabouts 18 centimeters, and appears to be a 100% new sculpt. When I first saw him, I thought he might have shared parts with Grifter, but that's not the case. I also thought he might have been reused because of these old style ankle balls. I hate to say it, but it's been so long since I've reviewed a McFarlane figure that isn't mostly reused that it's really refreshing. That being the case, I'm not really entirely sure how I feel about this design. I feel like it draws a lot of inspiration from how he looked in the Arkham Knight game. In fact, I originally thought about doing this video as a versus, but between the similar boxes, similar style, similar articulation, and similar piece count, this battle would have had more draws than a Diddy party. Pulling back the hood as much as I can, he does actually have hair under there, and if you're wondering, no, the jacket is not removable and has in fact been glued in place. In case there was any question, the hood doesn't move. That's definitely going to come up in the next category. In general, I'm not that big of a fan of his new mask, though I do really like the metallic paint. To me, it looks less like the Red Hood and more like the Winter Soldier, but I do think it makes sense that he's actually wearing a hood. And as usual, McFarlane's done a really good job with the texture, and that great texturing extends all over the costume. Guessing this is his new logo. Definitely a missed opportunity not to paint the zipper. Flipping around back, we can see a couple of weapon holders on there, which we'll be revisiting in Playability. Another reason why I'd wondered if these pants were reused was because of how hiked up the trousers are. And here's the thing, if I'm wrong and these are reused, please let me know in the comments. I like the pinstriping running down the sides, and naturally all the pouches and wrinkles have been nicely sculpted. The boots are pretty cool too, and I like how these straps kind of evoke Batman's gauntlet fins. Speaking of gauntlets, he has wraps around the forearms. I'm pleased to see that McFarlane did paint the inside joint, though it would have been nice if they could have used red pins. Speaking of red, I really like the tread that they put on his boots. It's not something we get often, but it's always appreciated. I might have small gripes like not painting the zipper or the color of the pins, but overall it's a well executed figure, and it's so nice to see an all new sculpt that isn't a collector edition or part of a build-a-weave. In fact, I'm so impressed that for presentation I'm giving Red Hood 5 points. Moving on to Poseability, and as I've hinted at, some of it is a bit hindered. From the top, I'm assuming that Jason's head is on a dumbbell joint as usual, and strictly speaking, he can look up and down and side to side, but the hood doesn't move, so you're just kind of stuck with this. Moving down, he can raise his arm 90 degrees, but doesn't really get anything in the way of forward and back this time. Red Hood does, however, have bicep swivel, double jointed elbow with a nice deep bend. Also, he might want to consider moisturizing, but instead of the usual McFarlane wrist ball, he simply has swivel hinge wrists. They actually only get up and down. It doesn't bother me, I'm just surprised is all. Moving to the middle, and Red Hood has a diaphragm joint and a dumbbell waist, but I am kind of concerned about how these hiked up Steve Urkel pants might get in the way. He can arch back this far, here he is standing straight, and here he is hunched forward, which is actually a lot better than usual. In spite of the jacket, he has a good amount of side to side, and of course twist. Below the bright silver belt buckle, and Red Hood has those typical McFarlane detinted hips. They can kick just about 90 degrees, and as is often the case, do a perfect split. He doesn't get much in the way of hip swivel, but that's okay. This figure has thigh cut. Generally speaking, McFarlane only does this if a character is getting a motorcycle, and sure enough, one is on the way. But I gotta tell you, thanks to the pouches and wrinkles, it is so well integrated. I understand not wanting to break up the aesthetic of a character like Superman where there's nothing to really hide the joint, but in a situation like this where the sculpt hides it, why not just go for it every time? Seriously, standing back, can you even tell? Suffice it to say, this makes me pretty happy. I'm also pretty happy by the nice deep bend of his double jointed knees, and lest we forget about the toticulation and the old style McFarlane ankle balls that can swivel, hinge, and like Jason Todd from street urchin to Robin to Joker victim to vigilante, pivot. Obviously this figure suffers because of the hood. Additionally, the hands and shoulders are a bit less articulated than usual, but the hunch forward is a nice surprise, and that's to say nothing about the thigh cut. For Poseability, I'm giving the red hood 4 points. Moving on to Playability, and it's about time to make do on talking about these. First things first though, and Jason comes with a trading card and a figure stand. If you want to read what that says, pause here. So far we've seen that the red hood comes preloaded with these fists. He also has a pair of grippies. Those of course will come in handy for gripping the handlebars of his motorcycle, though I can't help but notice that they are trigger hands. On the box, Jason is depicted as wielding twin swords, so I honestly don't know if that means that he's moved away from guns. Either way, if you've got him, he can definitely use them. But that's okay because he does in fact come with a sword. It's a relatively short sword. Nice red handle on that, by the way. But he only comes with one. Both the box and trading card give me the impression that he should come with two. And more importantly, the figure itself tells me he should come with two. Riddle me this. If McFarlane didn't give Jason a second sword, what did they give him?
A crowbar!
Poor Jason cannot escape this thing. And you know what? Maybe he does use it in the comic. I don't know. I haven't read any Dawn of DC. But what I do know is it doesn't fit here. Why on earth would McFarlane follow through with giving him the sword holders if they weren't going to give him both swords? Wait a minute. A black and red color scheme? Twin katanas on his back? Is Red Hood just DC's Deadpool? Of course, Playability is more than just accessories. It's also about how well your figure plays with others. For my only other figure of Red Hood in this costume, and here's the one by Spin Master, and then here we have New 52, 3 Jokers, which has the New 52 legs, the Gotham Knights video game, and again, the Arkham Knight video game. For the rest of the Bat family, though, and here's Better Than Batman and Titans Wave versions of Nightwing, Art of the Crime and 3 Jokers versions of Batgirl, Rebirth and Infinite Frontier versions of Damian, and Nightfall and Infinite Frontier versions of Tim Drake. Well, strictly speaking, it's Infinite Frontier, but the box says Rebirth. As for Batman himself, and here we have 3 Jokers in Rebirth, blue and gray and black and gray versions of Hush, and blue and gray and black and gray versions of Nightfall. That said, I'm not sure if it's relevant to this era, so I thought I'd bring out Dark Detective just to be safe, and just because it reminds me of the video game, here we have Arkham Knight and Arkham City. Lastly, and just because he's the villain I associate the most closely with Red Hood, and here we have Rebirth and Mortal Kombat versions of the Joker, along with Deadly Duo and the Punchline 2-pack. For a relative scale comparison, here's the Red Hood with Pizza Spidey and the Spectacular Spider-Man, and as always, here he is with Stealth Iron Man. What? It's not like you're using it anymore. Besides, you pretty much stole it from me anyway. The main problem with this figure is the lack of a second sword. It not only just feels incomplete, but because McFarlane included the sheath, it also looks like it's missing pieces. To me, the omission is so egregious that for Playability, I'm giving the Red Hood 2 points. This leaves us with nothing left to discuss but the price. I found this one at GameStop, but in general, Red Hood retails for $22.99, and had McFarlane just given him his second sword, this would have been a slam dunk. An all-new sculpt with 2 hands, 2 weapons, and not a collector edition? At this point, that's almost unheard of. I guess it's handy that he has a crowbar, because what could have been a home run, instead, falls a bit flat. For price, I'm giving Red Hood 3 points, averaging out to a final total of 3.6 out of 5. For more Batman-adjacent videos, check out one of these, and until next time, play nice and have fun.